So Google Scholar says that papers you have been a part of have been cited, 600 times or something like that.
Yeah.
What does that mean? And then, can we talk about academic publishing in general? Because then I'm assuming this is part of all this that we're talking about in terms of like development. Well, where do they go? They go to these papers and these publishings and stuff like that. So is the pipeline of scientific publishing or academic publishing flawed? What does that mean? And how? What is your kind of any thoughts on that?
I don't really have strong thoughts on it, to be honest. I mean, so for me, I kind of lost interest in doing that kind of research.
Right.
So like, what does that mean? I mean, so I was basically co-author on a lot of papers of my, major professor, and a couple of reports that I was lead author on. And one of them in particular got a lot of play, or has gotten a lot of citations that I still see today. But I think part of me I'm still going through this kind of transition process is just kind of like losing for myself faith in kind of like, or losing interest in this kind of academic publishing research. So I don't know if I have like a sophisticated critique of it per se, but just for myself, like it's too remote. Like just the whole process itself. Maybe this is a critique. You submit something and then you might hear back like 3 or 6 months later. I mean, the whole process takes years.
Yep.
But even when I was doing, being part of these papers, like I don't know how confident I was in what we were saying, just because the data, like you can't really know how good the data is. Like you try your best, the methods, like there was just so many points. And at a certain point I thought like, okay, like what, like there's, you publish a paper, one, either there's a couple options. Either you're kind of reinforcing conventional wisdom, or if you're not, if you're kind of challenging conventional wisdom, there's a good chance that it's because your data is flawed or your methods are flawed, and so but then the small chance that you're both challenging conventional wisdom and it's like legit, then the chances of actually reaching policymakers' ears and actually, translating to something that, actually has a net good in the world.
Is it convincible?
Right. So convincing a policymaker to adopt it, okay, that's another small probability. But then even a smaller probability is then this piece of information is in the hands of a technocrat. Even if it's the right insight, the way that they, apply the policy could have unintended consequences. If it's like this top-down thing. So it's just like the whole way I was just kind of like, I just don't like, I don't think I'm providing much good, in the world doing this. And so I just, at a certain point I was like, I just want to be more engaged, right? Like if I'm, so teaching is nice because you can actually like,
that's at one-to-one or one to small groups.
But then besides that, if other things is just being more involved with like projects or, being directly involved, like here, hopefully getting directly involved with the food system and actually just being a part of it and not studying it from like this kind of almost like false objectivity, but like, actually experiencing its challenges and its change from the inside.
Wow.
And so just being kind of a part of some kind of development, I definitely yearned for that.
Yeah. No, it's more like action rather than words and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like you did enough words, and then now you're kind of like, well, you want action.
Exactly. I just, and so, part of that is just this whole change of like wanting to become more embodied. My meditation practice started shifting towards a much more kind of, embodied, just the importance of embodiment and the relationship between the mind and emotions and physicality.
And some of our listeners may not really even know anything. Can you give us a real quick thing about embodiment, or even we had on Jeremy Johnson and talked about integral consciousness and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But what exactly in that does embodiment mean when you say that when you're like meditating and stuff?
Well, I can tell you what it means for me.
Sure. Yeah. Perfect.
So I mean, for a long time, I felt like I had this problem, which I thought of as a problem, where my mind would just kind of like spin out of control, and I had these kind of like emotional complexes that I would try to think my way out of, and I just couldn't.
Okay.
And at a certain point, when I started learning like just basic mindfulness meditation, that, oh wow, like, you know, maybe, you know, you can't really think your way out of these kind of emotional issues, right? And so just making the switch from like, you know, oh, I feel uncomfortable, let me try and rationalize my way out of it, let me try and just feel into my body, let me like actually like say body scan or
right, like feel it out, like what exactly are you doing,
right,
you know,
like where is the actual the mental tension. I started learning to trace it to physical tension, and that was fascinating, right, to discover that really for the first time of like, oh wow, like the mind body system is much more integrated than I thought. Right.
My big thing was the gut biome and how that, like, you know, things that you eat, you know, and everything like that. Like,
it's all connected.
all connected.
Exactly. And so, you know, and at that time I was interested in like philosophical questions of like the mind body problem and stuff like that. And you know, it all just kind of like came together in terms of like, you know, the necessity of not relying so much on, you know, deductive reasoning, basically, and kind of feeling your way into being, for lack of a better phrase.
Honestly, because I've been there too, like two in your head, thinking so much, and it's like some of the times when you just calm down, and then it's like, oh, what exactly is that? Like that you almost are meta-ing it. You know, it's like you can get into these like what do they call it? Like what's it off the with waves, like rip currents. You just stay in a rip current. You can't move, and it's just hostile as hell. And then it's like, but you really just need to calm down and then kind of get out of your body. That's cool though, you know, like that you've kind of changed things a little bit.
Yeah, and there was kind of a natural connection there. On Twitter sometimes I talk about like this idea of situated cognition, right? And that's, you know, in retrospect, I don't know if this is the exact linearity, but in retrospect, there's this interesting kind of convergence of like embodied cognition, of like understanding things more intuitively, you know, through your body, but then situated cognition of like understanding your sense of place. And and you know, and for myself, you know, I've always kind of, you know, been a placeless person. You know,
you're moving around,
moved around a lot, but even going to New Mexico, I was always an outsider, right? Like it's not like I had many different generations there, and so there's an interesting connection for me that, you know, it's still interesting to me of like this connection between, you know, embodiment, which is more of kind of an internal sense field, and situatedness, which is how does that internal sense field relate to, you know, your immediate environment. And so that for me, that's just been a really kind of fruitful intersection to explore.
That's good, because then that connects you also not just with other people, but then also your environment, your reality. Like you have to have constraints. So like there are constraints, and you got to deal with them. You know. So.
Yeah, and that also fits into my critique of, say, the economics of the outside in point of view. I was like, well, being, you know, learning a place from the inside out, you know, evolving with it, co-evolving with it. You know, that's all part of this kind of like embodied situatedness kind of thing, and it also, you know, aligns with kind of my critique of economics as well.
That's good.
So yeah.